You should be shocked that nobody's talking about the fact that China has just become the world's most dominant Bitcoin superpower all over again after they banned Bitcoin mining in 2021. Now, most people are familiar that publicly China admits that they are a Bitcoin superpower. They hold $12 billion worth of Bitcoin, as this chart right here shows. But while we've all been distracted about the news headlines of China printing records amounts of money, I think another chart that's far more consequential has been completely overlooked. And here it is right here. It's on the thumbnail of today's video. Why, oh why, do Chinese mining pools now control 55% of the global Bitcoin hash rate? What happened? Didn't China ban Bitcoin mining? Why are we seeing Chinese controlled Hong Kong openly start promoting Bitcoin spot ETFs? Why are we seeing China's neighbor Bhutan mining Bitcoin? Why are we seeing another one of China's neighbors, Laos, having their public government partner with Bitcoin miners? Okay. I think we've talked a lot about China's secret Bitcoin plan on the channel here, but I think what we've missed and what I think is far more interesting is the fact that we right now have a hash race going on. And this chart right here shows you the hash race is accelerating between the two dominant global superpowers. Okay. I don't think it's any coincidence that the countries with the two largest GDPs in the fiat world, America with a $26 trillion GDP and China with a roughly $20 trillion GDP, they are now battling for the scarce real estate in the Bitcoin space, in this new system, this parallel system. And we can see by this chart right here. Now, I'm not going to lie, this is a new article that came out this week. And again, I'm not just making charts up. I'm not just falsifying things. This is a new article. It came out last week. China still controls 55% of Bitcoin hash rate despite the crypto ban. Okay. Again, we've talked about the fact that China has a massive foothold in Bitcoin mining for a long time. Even more recently, for those who might have missed that live stream, we also talked about the fact that 90% of the Bitcoin ASICs that are used for Bitcoin mining, guess what? They're mined in China. Of course, they're mined in China. I think it's really interesting. A lot of people saying China's banned Bitcoin, China's forgotten about Bitcoin. I'm not so sure that should be the narrative. Okay, I think a lot of people have not been paying attention to what Hong Kong did a few months ago, earlier in the year. And now we have 55% of the global Bitcoin hash rate, once again, situated in China. This is really interesting. Okay, I do think it's interesting that 40% of the hash rate is in America. Now, if you were to really analyze this chart, I want you to really have a look at the purple or the blue part of this chart. Okay, it's grown pretty aggressively since 2020, hasn't it? So America and America's share of Bitcoin mining has grown a lot. Now, this is obviously for a number of reasons. One of those reasons, China banned Bitcoin mining in 2021. A lot of hash rate was sent to America. But when did that happen? It was Q2 2021. I want to show you guys. I think there was a trend shift happening before Q2 2021. Have a look at that blue growing in 2020. Why do you think America was slowly but surely aggressively increasing their share of the Bitcoin mining network in 2020? What happened that year? Michael Saylor adopted Bitcoin. Interesting, don't you think? I even have another video. No, I'm not even going to tell you about that video of Larry Fink. I've uncovered a different storyline. It's an old video of Larry Fink, but I've found some interesting comments that he said that I think have been completely overlooked. All I am going to say is that I think I might have found proof. Larry Fink admitted it himself. He's been interested in Bitcoin for a number of years. Okay, again, he only filed for that Bitcoin spot ETF in, what was that, about 13, 14 months ago? His words, he's been interested in Bitcoin for a number of years. That's at least 2. Okay, so we have Larry Fink quietly accumulating Bitcoin since at least 2022, could be earlier. His word, years. We also have MicroStrategy being the first public company to employ a full-blown Bitcoin treasury strategy, aggressively accumulating Bitcoin in 2020. And we have all of this very interesting data showing that mining pools in America started to get a lot of love and a lot of attention in 2020. Again, I try to bring you guys the news headlines with a little bit of a different spin and a different angle than most people. Again, we don't just read the news here on the channel. I want to try to show you guys the interesting news. And I think this is interesting. I think this has been really overlooked. The two global superpowers right now are battling it out in the Bitcoin industry, and they have 95% of the global Bitcoin hash rate. So don't get me wrong, I love that chart, but I also love this website here, this little article that also came out this week. Look at this, America versus China. This narrative is slowly beginning to brew, isn't it? We can see, and again, I want you guys to just remember that I think we're going to see some interesting things if Trump's elected. I think we're going to see tariffs placed on China again. I think maybe, just maybe, Donald Trump might actually even try to make it very difficult for China to get their hands on Bitcoin mining ASICs. I know it sounds crazy, but again, I just don't want you guys to forget, Donald Trump said himself, we want every Bitcoin to be mined in America. That's his words. I'm not sure if he completely understands the implications of just how this decentralized computing network that is Bitcoin works. I'd be very surprised if America amassed over 99% of the global hash rate in the future. Don't get me wrong, I'm bullish on America. I really am. But I think this is interesting, okay? Again, for those who might have missed it, before China banned Bitcoin mining in 2021, that's 65% of the global hash rate. And they had this for a long, long, long time. I'm talking years and years and years. So there's a lot of Bitcoin quietly in China. This is something I think a lot of people don't get, and they're not quite watching. Something else that most people aren't watching is this chart right here, hash rate, back close to an all-time high. Again, I think this is absolutely huge. It's massive. Now, let's start talking about this public versus private narrative. Okay, we might even talk about how this relates to stocks, Chinese stocks in particular, which have been, let's just say, aggressively rallying recently after China came out and absolutely flooded the markets with liquidity. Okay, it's absolutely huge. Okay, before we talk about that flood of liquidity, it's probably a good time to say, hey, if you are looking for an escape valve, if you are looking to buy some Bitcoin, we recommend that you check out everything that Rhino Bitcoin is doing. They are the new all-in-one super Bitcoin application. As you can see, they have a very nice user interface. You can pay people with Lightning. This really is a beginner-friendly Bitcoin application. Okay, you can buy Bitcoin on Rhino, you can sell Bitcoin on Rhino, you can use the Lightning Network, you can buy little USD credit cards, which is super cool and something I love to do. Obviously, traveling, in some countries it's difficult to spend Bitcoin. I'm going to go and actually explore the Bitcoin scene here in Peru very shortly. I apologize for, the ever-changing backdrops behind me. I am traveling a lot over the past couple of weeks. But again, traveling is made a little bit easier if you have a little USD debit card, and you can get those from Rhino. And pretty soon you're going to be able to do some pretty cool things at Rhino, like even, you can borrow against your Bitcoin potentially in the future. So stay tuned to everything Rhino is doing. Again, as you can see by the live chat right there, we have the link to Rhino in the live chat and down below in the description. So definitely check everything that Rhino is doing. Now, somebody else you should be watching everything they're doing is, of course, China. Because again, there is more to this Chinese Bitcoin story. And I think it begins here with the most recent stimulus flood. Okay, let's read this Bloomberg article. Xi's stimulus blitz adds 130 billion to the coffers of China's rich. Now, again, I love the framing of this article. Because this isn't some, right-wing libertarian, website. This is Bloomberg. Bloomberg is telling you that money printing enriches the rich. I'm telling you guys, we're going to go mainstream a lot quicker than most people think. Because that's exactly what money printing does, okay? Money printing steals money from the poor who don't own assets, and money printing props up the prices of assets, which enriches the rich who have these massive property portfolios with 10 houses, 20 houses, 100 houses. Okay? So if you think we should defund these money printing thieves, we'd appreciate a smashing of the like button. We would love to get this content in front of the eyeballs of more and more new people here on YouTube. We got a lot of fighting to do. There's a lot of crypto nonsense here on YouTube, not enough Bitcoin only signal. So again, I think it's a signal here that we are seeing Xi's stimulus blitz. $130 billion has been pumped into the coffers of China's rich. Now, before I read you a little bit more of the article, I just want to show you a chart because, again, a picture just paints 1,000 words. I really do love charts and things like this. And you can see pretty clearly that China's stocks have absolutely exploded over the past week since China came out with one of its biggest stimulus packages ever. Okay, it really was a big stimulus package. They were lowering interest rates, they were printing money out of the wazoo, they were doing all sorts of very funky things in the reverse repo market. And I think we can see very clearly that stocks have loved this most recent money printing bazooka. As you can see, stocks are up 35% in a week. That's ridiculous. I didn't know it was that much. That really is ridiculous. And if we were to try to zoom out a little bit here, this isn't the best chart, but Chinese stocks have been in free fall here for a little while. This chart doesn't give me all the data, but you can see Chinese stocks are down 47% from December 2021 to February 2024. Again, for comparison, I always like to provide context and comparison when I can. I want to show you US equities. So we can see this here is the chart of the S&P 500. Now, again, I'm going to show you the same time frame that I just showed you on that Chinese chart. So 2021 is somewhere around here. And as you can see, in the same time period, Chinese stocks were down 47%. US equities are up 21%. Now, again, just remember, this is the S&P 500. The NASDAQ is up even more than 21%. Way more than 21%. Okay? So China right now is absolutely flooding the market with money. It's incredible, honestly, the amount of money. But have a look at this. This is the interesting part. This is super interesting part that I found anyway. The collective fortunes of the 54 Chinese people on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index jumped about 19% in a week. The largest on record for a week-long wealth gain of the country's tycoons since they started tracking this metric in 2016. China's moguls have seen almost $130 billion of combined wealth added over the period. So again, this just goes back to the point we always hammer home here on the channel. The fact that we have, with the fact that we use in a monetary system that's corrupted is just something we need to change. Okay? China's central bank just comes out and they say, okay, we can see my buddies in the banking system are having some liquidity troubles. Let's help them. Let's ignore the everyday person who has been struggling to afford the overpriced housing in the countries for the past 20 years. Let's ignore the fact that people are losing their jobs. Let's ignore the fact that we're locking people in a cage. I'm going to be careful with that. Let's ignore the fact that cost of living is through the roof. But as soon as our billionaire buddies want a little bit more liquidity, or they want their stock prices pumped up a little bit because they're down 40% over the past 3 years. We're going to print hundreds of billions of dollars. Again, this is why we always, always, always talk about Bitcoin and how it is the solution to so many things, and why I believe Bitcoin will become the next global reserve currency. Let's answer Ryan's question here. What are your thoughts about rising and falling empires with Bitcoin disrupting the historical pattern? Okay, so I'm going to give some context to this amazing question by Ryan. Over the past 500 years, Ray Dalio studied 10 of the greatest empires, and he showed that each empire has this 250-year period of rise and then about a 50-year period of decline. Okay. And typically, when these countries rise in at the very end, as they're kind of peaking out as that dominant global superpower, they hold the global reserve currency. And if you look back over the past 500 years, each country that's held the global reserve currency has held it for around 100 years. So the Spanish, the Dutch, the British in the 1800s, America in the 1900s, and now we're in this new era where America has had the global reserve currency for a little bit over 100 years, which is about the average that we have seen over the past 500. And again, I do think it's not a coincidence that we're seeing these 100-year cycles of global reserve currency empires, and the fact that we have these 80-year long-term debt cycles. Okay, a new long-term debt cycle typically begins just after the global reserve currencies have transitioned. Okay, and these normally transition during wars. When did America officially take over as the global reserve currency holder? Just after World War II. They did, implicitly hold that global reserve currency a little bit earlier. They actually overtook the Brits in around the 1910s, 1920s era from memory as that global dominant store of value. Well, it's not a store of value. Well, it is. The US dollar is a store of value today for the majority of the world. That's reality. Central banks are still holding a lot of US treasuries. So again, that's a long ramble. I hope the context was helpful there. But yes, I do think Bitcoin is going to disrupt this, because on a Bitcoin standard, I don't believe we're going to see these 80-year long-term debt cycles that just keep perpetuating year after year after year. Okay. Again, the first article I ever wrote on Bitcoin, way back in like 2020, it was titled "Bitcoin is the Big Bang to Break All Cycles." Okay. This is when nobody knew who it was. I probably had 10 followers on Twitter. I just published an article on Medium. Okay. I had probably 10 subscribers on this YouTube channel. Okay. But I said the thesis is, and it has always been for me, that all of these cycles, 80-year long-term debt cycle, 90-year fourth turning cycle, 250-year revolutionary cycle, 250-year empire cycle, 100-year global reserve currency cycle, as well as the sovereign individual thesis, all of these cycles are unwinding today in the 2020s. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Bitcoin right now, I believe, has already entered its second phase of adoption. Technologies get adopted in two waves. The first wave from 0 to 10% adoption is the slow wave. And then the fast wave is where you go from 10% to 90% adoption. I think Bitcoin is, depending upon how you measure adoption, of course, it's beginning to reach a much quicker adoption rate. And again, I do think, to answer the question, Ryan, Bitcoin will change these historical patterns. And funny enough, I actually think it's going to favor America more than anything else. Okay, so Ryan's asking for my Medium article. Maybe producer Pam could slap my free Substack in the comments. You will be able to find an article on that. And while you're there, if you want the weekly news, make sure you subscribe to the Bitcoin News weekly newsletter. Also, a free newsletter. So definitely check that out. Now, guys, I think Bitcoin is going to change a lot of things. This is a funny comment. I actually didn't see this tweet. I get bombarded with power law tweets. All I am going to say is that Bitcoin is going to break all of its models in the Bitcoin space, rainbow chart, power law, and Bitcoin is also going to break all of those bigger cycles that I rattled off a second ago. I would love to have a link to that tweet, though. That looks like an amusing tweet. Now, with all that said, guys, really hope you enjoyed today's stream. I'm going to have another one coming to this weekend.